Howdy there, kiddos. Welcome to Forbidden Fruit, a new show on your favorite alternate reality gaming network, Rolling Hearthstone. This series of videos is about games that weren't only cancelled. The publishers tried to erase this dirty laundry from history. Well, we can't have that now, can we? We'll be starting with some low-hanging Forbidden Fruit. A little game that was available for a while, but now you can't download unless... Oh yeah, okay, I'm not doing the whole video like that. So anyway, PT is a demo for a game that was cancelled, and the demo is no longer available, but if you downloaded it in the past, you can still legitimately obtain it. And also, I will not get threatened with lawsuits just for showing you footage of it, so we're going to start with this one. Now, that's not true of the video I'm doing next week, but we'll talk about that game next week. For now, let's take a look at PT. PT is insidious in its design from the very get-go. It presents itself as a walking simulator haunted house sim, a genre that at the time, honestly a lot of us horror fans felt was totally beaten to death, and that there was no way a game where you just walk around and it presents you with jump scares and creepy sound cues could do anything to scare us anymore. And this demo is nothing but a repeating hallway within this house that has things you can interact with and cues that can be generated by standing in certain locations or doing certain things. So it wasn't anything new that we hadn't seen before from honestly a glut of games like this that had been released around the time when this demo came out in 2014. But even after playing for just a few minutes, you could immediately see that PT was different. PT is exactly what it looks like, and it uses the same things that we've seen before in similar games like creepy sights, spooky sounds, and jump scares. But it uses them very effectively, and to the point where I have to admit I honestly jumped a few times, and I have played so many of these kind of games that normally when things just jump out at me I'm just kind of like, can I kill it? But this one really had me jumping, and not only that, but it had that tingly feeling going up my spine. And not just the first time I played it, I've played this thing so much that I think I've seen all the content, and picking it up to record this footage after a couple of years, I had that creepy feeling again. And although I was expecting the jump scares, which by the way, I'm going to go out of my way not to spoil any of those in this video, because if you have not experienced them, I really highly recommend finding a way to get a hold of this game if you can, so that you can check it out, because these are some good jump scares. And the creepy sounds and sights are nothing to scoff at either, and this actually was our first hint at what this really was and who the people were behind it, was this taking genre conventions and turning them on their ear. The reason I say I think I've seen all the content in this demo is because the puzzles, for what they are extremely obscure in how they're solved. Like a lot of games like this that had come before, you progress through the game by interacting with things and triggering certain events to happen. But it seems that there are multiple paths through the game, and that not only that, but there are little hidden Easter eggs that can only be accessed if you do things a certain way. A lot of these solutions to these puzzles can be extremely esoteric, to the point where one of them even can involve talking into your microphone at a certain point during the game, which is something that I'm sure a lot of us don't even think to plug in a microphone when we're playing a single player game. And it's, something that was talked about in horror games. There were a couple games on the PS2 that tried this out, where you would talk into a microphone to interact with the game. But it's something that I don't think I've seen since then. And these little weird things, along with a couple of sort of stylistic choices, reminded us of a certain game series. And then there were a few little funny things within PT, like for example this fake crash, that immediately reminded a lot of us of a certain game developer. The only credit shown at the beginning of the demo is for 7780 Studio, a studio that didn't seem to exist and no one had ever heard of. But after completing the last puzzle in PT, and hearing a very creepy phone call, you're treated to this cinema scene that shows that this entire thing was actually an elaborate prank. And when we found out who the pranksters were, I don't think that there was anyone who's a fan of any of these people or this series who was at all angry. When I saw that name come up on the screen, and I started to suspect what I was seeing, I can't even remember, honestly, all the emotions that went through me. And then, after that, when I saw Guillermo del Toro, I was just like, oh snap, oh crap. And then from there, to see Norman Reedus was starring in this game, someone who, of course, was already famous from The Walking Dead, but a lot of us who, remember him from way back in Blade 2 and the Boondock Saints, have been a fan of Norman Reedus for a long time and really think of him as sort of a fan's actor that is exactly the person we would want to be in, yes, a new Silent Hill game. After years of the series being squandered on underqualified developers, under-budgeted projects, things that were obviously destined for failure almost from the first screenshot you saw, Silent Hill was finally going to be handled by probably the only people who could reinvent it in a way that would really honestly win over us fans immediately. If you follow gaming news, though, you're probably aware that things didn't turn out exactly as we hoped because Konami. You may have heard that less than a year after this, Hideo Kojima and Konami had a very, very terrible breakup to their multi-decade relationship, which resulted in not only Metal Gear Solid 5 not being completed to the director's standards, but PT, or Silent Hills, being cancelled. Which, I gotta admit, there were a lot of Metal Gear games that were pretty good, and I would have liked another 10-15% of effort to be put into that game. But for me, the ultimate tragedy of this was obviously Silent Hills, being that I'm a huge fan of that series, and we got basically 3.5 good games, and then we've suffered through half a dozen slaps to the face since then. I cried, man, I'm not gonna lie. I was so excited for this, and I was just, I had it set in my mind that this was it. This was the new age, this was, they were gonna reinvent horror, and it was gonna be novel and amazing and good again. And in a way, even just this demo did that. There have been all kinds of copycats to PT that have, they've moved the genre forward a little bit, but also games like Resident Evil 7 obviously took a ton of inspiration from PT, and I would say that Resident Evil 7 really brought the Resident Evil series back to life. So even with this game being cancelled, its influence was immense, and I'm really glad that it exists and that I'm able to play it, but it definitely, I'm hugely disappointed that the game was cancelled, even though there's rumors, there have been ever since this happened, that somehow, some way, they're going to get this dream team back together and some game resembling this is actually going to be made. But it hasn't happened and been announced yet, so for the moment, I'm going to remain disappointed until there's an official announcement that, something like this is for real. But even beyond that, it really bugs me when publishers do this, where they try to erase their mistakes from history completely. And, I mean, maybe some gamers would just continue to resent them and would go out and play this, and it would just fire them up that how dare they all over again, and they would get another round of angry emails. But the idea of taking something so brilliant and so amazing that a lot of us really enjoyed, and trying to just get rid of it and say, oh, that never happened, we never had that horrible breakup, that wasn't real, and making it so that gamers can no longer easily access this stuff. I really wish they wouldn't do that, because this is something that even if the game never comes out, this demo in itself is really worthy of your time and is a great horror experience in itself. It can take you anywhere from 5 minutes to a couple of hours, depending on how you go through this, to get through PT. And along the way, there are all kinds of cool Easter eggs, there are creepy sounds that I've only triggered on my dozenth time through it, and weird little things that you may not notice or may just not happen on every playthrough. It's truly a solid horror game, even just in the limited state of what they called a playable teaser, and it's really a shame that it's not available to people. Now, of course, in the wide world of piracy, you can pretty easily obtain it, and PS4 emulators are getting pretty close to being up and running with actual retail games. So it may not be too long until, if you're willing to, break a few rules, you can play this again. But it sure would be nice if Konami would just sell it, and even better, if they would just make up with Kojima and let the licenses for the games he wants to make follow him wherever he wants to go, because they would still get the royalties. It would probably be easier to just let Kojima and Del Toro make a game for Sony with Konami's Silent Hill license, and them just collect the licensing fees for it. They wouldn't have to put any effort into it. They wouldn't have to slow down their pachinko machine production. All they would have to do is just sit back and let them make a great game that lots of people would like to play. But I don't want to spend this whole video or this entire series ranting with my personal feelings about how much it sucks that these are canceled. But this is PT, or the Silent Hill game that never was, and you know, I just am throwing in my 2 cents on it because I'm a huge Silent Hill fan, and I really hope that someday, if enough of us keep making videos, especially during the Halloween season every few years, we keep this memory of this game alive, and hopefully in some way that makes it available to you again to play. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Forbidden Fruit. This is Rolling Hearthstone. I'm Ryan. Thanks for watching.